Hello, I'm Gordon Lang, editor of CameraLabs.com. I'd like to give you a brief video tour around the Panasonic Lumix DMC-FZ35. Here it is, the FZ35, or as it's known in some regions, the FZ38. This is Panasonic's latest super zoom digital camera. It's the successor to the eternally popular FZ38, and it shares a number of features with that model. It's got pretty much the same body, it's got the same 18x optical zoom range and the same 2.7-inch screen round the back. Now let's take a look at this camera's highlights and the new features that Panasonic's equipped it with. First of all, the resolution has inevitably been increased from 10.1 to 12.1 megapixels, although we're pleased to see that the FZ35 or 38 still features RAW recording capabilities. This is a key advantage that the camera has over its arch rival, the Canon PowerShot SX20IS. The headline feature remains unchanged from its predecessor, an 18x optical super zoom range that's equivalent from 27 to 486mm. In practice, that will take you all the way from decent wide-angle coverage to really serious telephoto. Now 18x may not seem quite as long as the 20x of the Canon or even the 26x of the Olympus, but really seriously, do you need something that zooms in that far? 486mm is really serious magnification and it will suit almost everybody. But if you're really uncertain as to the difference it makes with the 20x of the Canon, then check out my full review at CameraLabs.com. I've got pictures taken from exactly the same spot with both cameras fully zoomed in so you can see the difference for yourself. Importantly though, Panasonic has improved the autofocus speed and the optical stabilization of this lens, and in our tests both proved more effective than the earlier FZ38. Around the back of the camera is the same size screen as its predecessor, a 2.7-inch model with 230K resolution, and is still fixed in position, so sadly Panasonic hasn't taken the opportunity to upgrade either the screen size, the amount of detail, or maybe even replaced it with a fully articulated model. That still is a key advantage of going for the Canon model instead. However, Panasonic has upgraded its face detection system and it now has face recognition. The camera can actually remember a number of faces that you program into it, and when it recognizes those, it'll pop their name underneath it. Hopefully you can see that under me right now, and it will give those faces priority in a group shot. Externally, the FZ35 or FZ38 greatly resembles its predecessor. Both share essentially the same lightweight compact body. But look a little closer and you'll notice some key differences. At the top of the camera there's still sadly no flash hot shoe, but there are at least new stereo microphones. Take a look at the mode dial here and you'll notice a new movie mode icon. This is actually a creative manual mode that lets you actually adjust the aperture and shutter speed when you're recording movies. That's not something you'll find on its arch rival, the SX20IS. However, this camera has inherited something from the Canon, a dedicated record button on the rear. Press this button in any mode and you can start recording video. Both the Panasonic and the new Canon also share a new interface. If I turn the camera to the side here and open this flap, you'll see it's now equipped with an HDMI port. This allows the camera to make high definition slideshows on HD TVs, and if you have a compatible Panasonic Viera set, the remote control for that model will also control this camera when it's doing slideshows. We're outside with the FZ35 or 38. You've already seen the optical zoom range of this camera. I'm going to show you once again. Zooming all the way in there. Look how quickly this camera can focus. I'll do that once more over here. It's really very swift, but you'll notice that I'm wobbling quite a lot here, so I'm going to switch on the stabilization. Pull it onto auto, and about a second later, look how much that image is stabilized there. Panasonic say it's more effective than before, and that's certainly borne out in our tests. That's effective for about 4 stops of compensation. If I half press the shutter release again, you can see again how quickly this camera focuses. Just going to zoom out here. Now as always you can overlay various graphics on the screen. If I press the display button, I've got an alignment grid here and also a live histogram here. You can switch either of these off if you prefer. Next up is a DSLR style view here, and then finally one with some shooting information. You'll notice here the remaining shots. If I press it once more, that's the remaining time if you start filming. Of course by pressing this button you can start filming at any point. I just want to show you one other thing here. Look at this exposure in automatic. The camera selected an aperture of f5.6 under these fairly bright conditions, and that's not ideal. Really it should be going for something more like f4. for the sharpest quality, and to do that you can either choose F4 in aperture priority, or you can go for program shift. If I just nudge this joystick up and down, you can see that I can adjust that aperture. So if I take that down to F4 now, I know I'll get a much sharper result, and you can see exactly what I mean by that in our full review at cameralabs.com. Like its predecessor, you can overlay a superimposed drop-down menu to adjust various settings. You saw that a moment ago, so you can adjust things like the stabilization, the metering, the white balance, sensitivity, the resolution, and notice how you can also set the video quality here, and also the brightness of the LCD screen. It's a very quick and easy system to use. Like its predecessor, the FZ35 or 38 features high-definition movie recording in the 720p format, and you're watching an example of it right now. I'm stood about 1 metre in front of the camera, and the sound you hear is that recorded by its new stereo microphones. Now, like the TZ7 ZS3 Compact, Panasonic has upgraded the movie recording features in this camera to give you the choice of recording formats. You can either record in the AVC-HD Lite codec or with Motion JPEG. The advantage of using AVC-HD are longer recording times because it's more efficient, and it can also keep recording until you run out of memory. Unless of course you have a European FZ38, in which case tax regulations limit you to 30 minutes. Alternatively, if you want to edit your footage, it's better to use Motion JPEG. Now that's limited to around 8 minutes using the HD mode, but it is a lot easier to edit using your computer. Now let's see some examples of the HD video mode in practice. This first sequence was filmed with the FZ35 or 38 mounted on a tripod and smoothly panning from left to right. All the clips that you see in this sequence were filmed using the AVC-HD Lite codec and assembled using Adobe Premiere Pro CS4. Now it is possible to optically zoom the lens while filming, here from wide angle all the way to the maximum telephoto, and the camera will continuously autofocus during that process. Now as I zoom out here, you'll see the camera go slightly out of focus a couple of times, but generally speaking the FZ35 or 38 does a pretty good job at keeping the image sharp while you're zooming it. This next sequence was filmed handheld. I've got image stabilization enabled here and the camera's fully zoomed in. I'm trying to follow the action. Sometimes when you pan like this with image stabilization, the image can jump a little, but here it's managing to cope with the motion quite well, and again you get a great contrast between zooming in and zooming out here. This next shot was taken under much lower light conditions, but the 38 or 35 has done a good job at capturing a decent amount of detail with a minimum amount of noise. It's not too bad under these situations. Finally, a shot in the creative manual mode with the aperture wide open. Now to get a small depth of field you do need to zoom in quite a lot and go for macro style effects like this, but as you can see I've managed to blur that background quite nicely and focus interest on that magazine in the foreground. Panasonic's updates to the FZ35 or FZ38 may be fairly modest, but by building upon what was already one of the best super zoom cameras on the market, well, one of the best has just got even better. Should you go out and buy the FZ35 or 38, you certainly won't be disappointed. But before you do so, it's very important that you compare it very carefully with the Canon PowerShot SX20IS. Both cameras share a great deal of features in common. They both have super zoom ranges. They both have 720p HD movie modes and HDMI output. Beyond that, there's pros and cons to each model. For example, the Canon features a flash hot shoe and a flip out screen, whereas the Panasonic has raw recording, face recognition that I showed you earlier, longer exposures and a number of other features. So as always, you've got to really weigh up which of these features are going to be most important to you in practice. And to help you do that, as always, I've thoroughly compared both of these models in my full review at cameralabs.com. Not just in terms of the features, but you can also see how the image quality compares, both outdoors in real life situations and also indoors at higher sensitivities. I've additionally got a couple of movie clips that you can download and play on your own computer so you can compare the 720p modes for yourself. So to find out which super zoom is going to be best for you and to check out all of those features, then take a look at my full review. As always, you'll find it at cameralabs.com.